Chief Executive Officer of PGIM India Asset Management Private Limited. Ajit oversees all aspects of the asset management business, including mutual fund, portfolio management services, and alternates. He is an industry veteran and has over 2 decades of leadership experience in business strategy, distribution, sales, and marketing. Can we have an applause for that, please?
Thank you.
He has contributed to key industry bodies and is a sought-after speaker at various domestic forums and conferences. He has a well-awareness and well-sorted information on financial wellness, and especially the area of retirement has been a continuing passion. So that makes you my new friend, sir.
Thank you.
Ajit enjoys sketching portraits and recording songs when we get a chance. We definitely have some chance. We could hear you some rendition, sir. Recording everything from mythology, history to nutrition helps him bring insights from other fields to connect the dots on money and happiness for clients, partners, family, and friends. Welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for being a part of the event today.
Thank you so much for that very kind. Good afternoon, IFPA. I'm happy to be back on stage with you after some time. And, you know, the topic that IFPA has chosen to ignite, inspire, and transform, and to speak right after Vishal, another veteran and another great friend of mine, where he talked about the advantage of bringing perspective into our daily sort of learning and transformation, probably segues very nicely into the presentation that I want to talk about today. And it's almost become a standard thing for Ajit Menon to be called into any conference and then speak about retirement. Because that's been my favorite subject, as you guys know, for a very, very long time. My wife reminded me actually today morning that I completed 30 years of my career this month. And 25 of that has been with mutual funds. And if there is something that I can say for myself and what has made Ajit Menon, it has been the MFD community who I grew up with in this entire career of mine. And just as Vishal talked about perspective, it was the perspective that I learned from many of you, and so many of you are here in the audience today, that has helped me actually think about how can I add value to the distribution and advisor fraternity. And amongst many such perspectives that I have built upon, I think the strongest has been retirement. And the reason was, at some point, as I was meeting advisors and I was talking to clients and I was talking to industry experts, not just in India but abroad, I hit upon this very simple truth, that retirement is the only financial goal of your life for which you don't get a loan. The only financial goal of a person's life for which you don't get a conventional loan. You may get things like reverse mortgage in the Western markets. They're not very mature in markets like ours and are unlikely to be. So if you think about it, when we think about SIPs, when we think about lump sums, children is what comes first for SIPs and lump sums and all of the investors' investments. If you fall short of it, you can take an education loan. House, car, business, think about all financial goals that we plan for, and you'll get a loan for it if you have a little bit of a gap. There's only one financial goal for which you don't get a loan if you have a gap: retirement. And therefore, I believe that this is a subject that needs all of our attention. And as I've dived into the subject, I think for over a decade of the 2.5 that I've spent in mutual funds, I've come across various aspects of it, which I think is extremely important for us to think about and to transform, to take a word out of this annual event's agenda, our perspective, as Vishal was saying, and to think about it a little differently. Just summarizing a little bit of what Vishal was speaking about as perspective, if I were to put it into a little bit of a nutshell, not 100%, but just into a nutshell, there is a quote which, and I've actually used only 2 quotes ever in all of my presentations, I think in the last 15 years, but the one quote that I've used, which is not in this presentation right now, which I will repeat, is that when an industry is new, distributor is king. When the investor gains awareness, the product is king. And when the product becomes commoditized, brand becomes king. And this mutual fund industry of ours, including us AMCs as well as for advisors, we are in that third stage. Because as Vishal said, in 2018, when SEBI came in and said all products need to be categorized and everything should look the same, you can have one fund in each category. You can't even have too much flexibility about how to name the product, except for thematic. It is the stage where it has become commoditized. So there was a time when I started in this industry where the only conversations I would have is whether the AMC is taking distributors to Bangkok or to Moscow. And then as awareness grew, product became king. That's SIP. Today people say I've invested in SIP, not mutual funds, not realizing that that is what it is. And then 2018 came and it's been commoditized, and therefore brand is king. And that means that anybody, whether it's an AMC or an individual distributor, if you focus on what makes you, what makes your brand stand out and relevant, you can build a business far ahead of what you're even dreaming today. And there are people who have proven that, and you know many of those examples. So part of that is to get perspective, to change the way that we can differentiate ourselves when we talk to our investors. And most of the time, what I have focused on, and I don't think I've made a market presentation in the last 15 or 20 years, ever. I've always presented on some value add, some perspective that can take the MFD business or change a mindset or an attitude and value add in a way that you can actually get more powerful in front of an investor. So let me take you into the subject of retirement. And as I mentioned, I think that retirement is the only financial goal for which you don't get a conventional loan. Please remember, as MFDs, when you build up AUMs which are focused around retirement, that retirement is also the only AUM that does not get redeemed. Every other goal, when the child is ready to go for that education, when the child wants to get married, when the house has to be bought, or when the car has to be bought, the money will be redeemed. But the retirement AUM, you're only going to create an income out of it. The AUM remains. And that's the most powerful for building a business. But what's the perspective that you can build on it? And to build that perspective, I think we need to look back. Where did retirement start? It started in 13 BC when Emperor Augustus decided to give pension for those soldiers who have completed 20 years in the army. These are veterans. And he was only protecting himself because suddenly there were so many veterans who were out of a job because they were no longer soldiers, but they were not getting an income. So there was a high likelihood that he could get overthrown by these veterans. So he decided to keep them happy by giving them a pension. It was basically to save himself. And then in 1889 is when pensions and retirement started the way we understand it today by Otto von Bismarck, who was the president of Prussia, which today you know partly as Germany. Again, he was more like a dictator, and he realized that the Russian communism, socialism ideas were beginning to flow everywhere, and he didn't want social unrest. And he decided to start giving pensions to workers because people were moving from the agrarian society to industrial economy, and they were having a lot of problems because you could get killed with machines, you could get maimed, you could get injured, you were working with chemicals without safety hazards during that time. So just so that you try and not have civil unrest, he decided to give pensions to people above 70. Now please remember the year 1889 and the age 70. He was an extremely smart person. People didn't live beyond 50 that time. So he knew what he was doing. Now, that brings you to a bit of a small conclusion. Let's look at it. People basically toiled until they couldn't, once upon a time. Life expectancy was much lower than what we knew today. Retirement, the way we are still talking about it, comes from some old industrial era concept of 65 and 58 and 70 or whatever that you call it. Shifting from an agrarian society to an industrial economy brought a lot of harsh conditions. You had avoiding social unrest in the army or people as the main reason why governments started giving pensions to people. And then post-World War II, governments just decided to adopt this because they didn't want a war again or civil unrest. So they decided that most governments decided to start giving pensions to keep people happy and in a peaceful place. And there was another reason, unions. Unions negotiated hard for workers' rights. And that was the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s when you got medical benefits and disability benefits. You could include your spouses, your children, your parents. That's how unions negotiated. And therefore, it was an idyllic society for individuals who were working because they could get very defined pensions when they stopped working, almost up to 70% of their last drawn salary for the rest of their life. That's the 50s, 60s, 70s, and maybe even a little bit of the 80s. And it is from that old era that we get the perception and perspective of retirement the way we still sell it, which is two people enjoying themselves on a beach, having a drink, or doing whatever. This is still the concept of retirement. We ask people to calculate what is the inflation impact on your expenses up to the age of 60. You need multiplied by 25 times this corpus, so you need to start this SIP. If that person lived to 32, that means he's homeless. That corpus will not last. So we are still selling retirement in a very, very old way. And what is, therefore, if you think about it, people talking about and thinking about retirement today? Today, retirement, when you think about it, people don't say this to you, is a negative emotion for people. The moment they think of the word, they think about people who are old, who have got diabetes, who have got hypertension or blood pressure, they're sleeping in the afternoon, basically purposeless or without respect. And people don't want to be that. Definitely not the young people. So the word itself is negative, which is why people deprioritize retirement, push it down their priority. It's so much more happier to think about rest. Let me give you one fact and one insight that's come out of the PGIM research. And I want you to remember this like gospel, because I do think that this is an insight which changed a lot of things for me as well. People only invest for happy goals. People only invest for happy goals. Children's education, their marriage, buying a house, buying a car. These are happy goals. Retirement, for a lot of people, is not a happy goal. And that's why it's not in priority. So the simplest thing to do is to make it a happy goal. To talk not of retirement, which is a negative word, but maybe financial freedom as a word, and adopt that word to talk about it and to make this concept more a happy goal. So retirement is negative. Young ones want to stop working much earlier. Defined benefit pensions have been phased out. Medical advancements are lowering mortality rates, and people are living longer. So the fact is that there is a whole generation of people that are probably today investing with fintechs, direct in whatever you call it, who are probably going to live to 100. How are we selling retirement for 60 and multiplied by 25 years or 30 years? How is this new type of investor likely to think about investments for their retirement, which is one of the most difficult but most essential goals to plan for? So the fact is that today, and I just invented up this word while I was making this presentation, that the challenge is longevity, the money that you need for living longer. How much money will you need if you are going to live longer? And how do you work on this? How do you help clients through this most important goal? Before I go into the rest of the presentation, let me just give you a small tidbit from a data point of view. Again, to change some perspective. Imagine a person having a lakh rupee salary and something that grows at 7% annually. And let's take a base case that that person is saving 10% and is invested in a bank deposit or some fixed income product that gives them 6%. She's going to get 1,86,000 after 10 years or 7,02,000 after 20 years. But we want to go after that person's investment and talk about, asset allocation, equity products. So you double the returns. The savings rate remains 10%. You get a 12% return. And now that person has made 2,55,000 after 10 years or 12,93,000 after 20 years. Let's flip the argument. Don't change the returns, but change the savings rate. A 20% savings rate and the same 6% return. You're better off after 10 years and 20 years. Why? Simple. Magic. of saving money earlier and letting it compound for longer. As simple as that. And even though the returns are half, that's the impact you can make when you help people save more towards a particular goal. It's not the returns, it's the savings rate. That's even more important. Now let me dive into something that we've done, and most of you know, we do retirement research. The second report came out in 2023. And in that report, we found a couple of things. One is the COVID impact. Most males and women who are working, pre-COVID, the thought process was that I'm doing this for my family, it's my responsibility, I have to, as the man of the house, the woman of the house, make sure that my family is financially secure. But after COVID, people were saying, what about me? Each man or woman was saying, sure, I want to be still responsible for my family and for everything else, but I want to be something for myself. What if I had died during COVID and so many people lost their lives? So self-identity in individuals have risen post-COVID, and I don't think that's going to go away. The second is, we found in our research that the people who said that they were the most ready for retirement were those who had a secondary source of income. That secondary source of income can come from investments or come from something else. But they were saying the most confident people in retirement were those who had a secondary source of income. And while there were people who were saying that the secondary source of income comes from investment, there was also a good large percentage of people who were saying that the secondary source of income comes from a secondary unique skill that they have. Ladies and gentlemen, the concept around being retirement ready, if you want to rethink it for the new world, is to imagine that the source of your income is largely dependent on one skill that you have, and that's your biggest risk. And if every individual had a second skill that they could get money from, could earn from, could monetize, even if the amount that they were monetizing were a small fraction of their salary, they will never need money for the rest of their lives. Whatever corpus or whatever amounts that they can get, they'll never be dependent on their children's. That is the fear that you can help your clients gain from the way to think about a secondary skill. Using this particular insight from our own research, we sort of launched a new report called the 50 Gig Report. And we looked at various skills that people were monetizing during COVID and beyond, and people were making money not from their primary source, but from a secondary hobby or skill that they had. Cybersecurity, childcare, CXO on hire, tour guide, beauty grooming, sports coaching, cloud kitchen, animal care, social media, brand designing. And think about it, there were 50 different hobbies that people have monetized, and they don't need money for the rest of their life, regardless of the fact that they don't have the corpus of retirement that the calculator told them. By the way, this report is free, and if IFPA has a group, it will reach you into your inbox on your WhatsApp. By the end of the day, feel free to share it with your customers, use it the way you want to. Because for the first time, this report might probably be something that can help you to say, we are not just coming to take your money for SIP and lump sums, we are here to tell you how to make more money. And it could be the mother-in-law in the house, or the woman, or the man, or whoever else. But, they can do it. Imagine it, all of you can at least teach as a secondary skill, right? In a college or a school or wherever else, and earn some money. And that can be powerful. So, what you can learn and become, its scope, what all you can enjoy, how much will it cost you if you were to do that hobby, how much can you earn, what you need to do to become one of them. All of that is part of it. And we've interviewed lots of people who have basically done it and been there, and I'm sure most of you already know there are people during the COVID time and beyond who have actually been there and started taking just their secondary skill and becoming far more resilient for retirement. So the conclusion is that meeting the retirement challenge of longevity, as I call it, it's just a funny word, I just made it up, is working on making money from a skill that you can enjoy for as long as you can enjoy it. So you have to break that retirement myth that retirement is about hanging up your boots at 55 or 45 or 60 and doing nothing. It's about stopping your primary job but doing what you love in life, not caring about how much you're earning from that, Because even if you have built up a little bit of a corpus from your primary job, I think 95% of India will be probably lower than this actually. And they just wanted to withdraw a lakh, annually inflated at 6%. And if they had that corpus and they put it in a bank, or even if they put it in a conservative hybrid fixed income fund, that corpus will last you 23 years. Now, if you use the 3-bucket solution, which is the same corpus of 2.1 crores, same withdrawal of 1 lakh at 6%. But now, if you put that money into 3 buckets, a conservative hybrid fund, a balanced advantage fund or some other hybrid product, and a flexi cap or a large cap fund, the money will last forever. And the simple math is that as you start withdrawing from the first bucket, it will last you 6 years. By the way, it's 33, 33, 33. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Simple. There is no math to it. It's a simple, just 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 3 buckets. The first bucket will last you 6 years. The next bucket will last you 10 years. But by then, the third bucket has got 16 years to compound. That's the simple magic. And you're just withdrawing disciplined way from the first bucket, then the second, then the third. Now, if you had somebody who had just a smaller corpus, 1.5, the calculator said something else, but he doesn't have that corpus, and they wanted to withdraw the same 1 lakh at the 6% inflation, what's going to happen? And think about that person now saying, okay, I have a secondary skill. I can teach yoga. I can teach in a college. I love animals, so I can get into grooming. I have a great voice. I can go into voice overs for cartoons and things like that. I know languages. I can translate. And so many such hobbies that you can monetize. And think about it. If you put that initial corpus of 1.5, 33, 33, 33 into the 3 buckets, it will last you 21 years. But that gig income of 40,000, if you just keep putting it into that third bucket, it will last forever. Imagine somebody to get a corpus of that 1.5 crores working for 25 years. He needs to start with a salary of 5 lakh and at the end of his career, probably at 20 lakhs. That's the average customer you're going to find as well. It's as simple as that. Everybody can reach here as long as they think they have a secondary skill that they can monetize, however small that earning is. Because that 40,000 is not something they need to do forever. It's something they need to do just for 15 years or so, extra. And that money will last forever. So I hope that I've been able to change and give some perspective on the subject of retirement. The most difficult financial goal, the most important financial goal, the most valuable asset AUM that an advisor can grow. And I hope, therefore, that I've been able to just focus the conversation on one thought, one thing you can do to change how to speak about this and how to guide people. Use the free resources that we have, and you can inspire, you can transform many of your customers and yourselves into this goal. So thank you very much. I do think that this is the second quote that I've always used. People don't make their futures, they make their habits, and their habits make their futures. By the way, the calculations that I have taken for those projections are all based on what AMFI prescribes for projection, because a lot of people use 15% for equity because Sensex has been doing it for 25 years. That's not what we've used. We've used 12.9%. It's prescribed by AMFI. There was a guideline from AMFI in November of 2023, which says what can you take as a rate of return for fixed income or for hybrid or for equity. We've used the same return. You can make it more conservative because, making your money last to infinity is not even required. Even if you take conservative rates, you'll probably see the money last for 50 years. That's good enough. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that perspective and that you will transform with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I hope I wasn't time.
If you have 5 minutes, we have chala jata hu. You can sing one line.
I've lost my voice. That's what I'm saying. I wish I can do a good job, but
May I invite Mr. Srikanth Matrubai to come on stage?
So sorry, but the next time I promise.
Yes, we will. Last year also you promised.
I don't want to be pulled out.